everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy week. I know we're all struggling to get to Friday and the weekend. But thanks for taking some time to join us. My name is Denisha. I'm a fifth year graduate student in neuroscience at the University of Rochester. And I'm currently the webinar director for Científico Latino for this year. And I'm really excited about this webinar today. You're going to get to talk to some awesome grad students that span a couple different programs. And so whatever question you have, please put in the chat. And I promise we will try to get to it today. I'm going to turn things over to Roberto, who is our webinar coordinator for this year.
Hi, everyone. As Anisha just said, my name is Roberto Rodriguez, and I am a fourth year PhD student at the Rockefeller University in New York. I focus in neuroscience, and I'm very excited to be in this panel with all of you. Yeah, today we're going to answer some questions about admissions into STEM PhD programs, and we're going to get the perspective of current graduate students who span different fields within STEM. So, looking forward to it. I'm going to start by introducing our speakers today. And after I introduce each of them, I want to give them a few seconds for them to also say hi and introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Hosea Santiago Cruz, who is a fourth year PhD student in environmental engineering at Carnegie Mellon University, and who also is an NSF GRFP fellow. He previously completed a bachelor's in chemical engineering from the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. His current research focuses on enhancing the removal and degradation of hazardous water pollutants, specifically PFAS. I hope I'm saying that correctly, which are also known as forever chemicals. So, Hosea, feel free to say hi and introduce yourself.
Hey, thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm really excited to answer your questions. And I guess since I know I'm also from Puerto Rico, so yeah, it's me.
Awesome. So next up, we have Tatiana Vera, who is a fifth year PhD candidate in the counseling psychology program at Teachers College, Columbia University, and is currently the student president of the National Latinx Psychological Association and Interdisciplinary Minority Fellowship Program Fellow. Her research takes a multicultural approach to qualitatively understand how educational systems impact the mental health of STEM Latina doctoral students. So Tatiana, feel free to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, that was a great intro. Thank you. Yeah, as it said, I'm a fifth year here. I actually made a cross-country move from New York City. Now I'm in San Diego. So loving it here so far. I've only been here about 3.5 months and starting to learn how to surf because you gotta make sure that you're calming yourself in these trying times. But yeah, that's mainly what my dissertation work is roughly about. So I'm excited to kind of talk to everybody here on the panel.
I see. Okay, and then last but not least, we have Alma Renero, who is a third year PhD student in biological sciences at UC San Diego. Alma is a first generation college graduate in her family. She attended community college and transferred to UC San Diego to complete her bachelor's degree in molecular and cell biology. After graduating, she worked in research both in academia and industry settings prior to matriculating as a PhD student at the University of California, San Diego. Her current work focuses on understanding cellular senescence and its role during viral infections in the lung. So, Alma, feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. And just to add a little bit more, I'm also a DACA recipient, so I can totally answer questions if you're a documented student or DACA student wanting to go to graduate school. I can definitely get my take on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. So the way this panel is going to work, there's 5 questions that we have prepared in advance for our panelists. So ideally, the panelists, you guys can choose which one of you wants to take the main answer. But of course, you guys encompass different fields and different experiences. So if there's something that you want to complete in the answer and you want to chime in, please feel free to do so. And then after we're done with our prepared questions, we'll open it up for questions from our students as well. So let's get started with our first question. which is about what are some of the common pitfalls or misconceptions about the application process that you guys feel prospective students should be aware of? So who wants to take this one?
Could start. Like I think like a lot of people focus so much on like their contributions to, for example, science. Like, "Oh, I don't have enough publications, or I don't have enough of this." And sometimes, as long as you have the passion and you can show it in your statement of intent, it's a good start. As well as letter recommendations. I didn't realize that those were incredibly important until I started to review admissions in my program, and that can really tell you a lot about a person. So I would suggest maybe trying to find like really good recommenders.
Awesome. Tatiana, Hosea, you guys want to chime in?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess. Oh, you go first, Looking.
go for it.
Okay, so I don't know how problematic this is, but I guess GPA is not the most important factor in entering to grad school. Usually, if you have more research experience or just like overall like extracurriculars, I think that they value that a lot, especially the research portion. So usually, if your GPA is not the best, probably if it's above 3 and you have research experience, you're good. Like so yeah, usually like in undergrad, you're usually very worried about GPA, and although it's an important thing to get good grades, the GPA doesn't dictate whether you go get in or not. I think that's like a little advice.
I agree with everything the co-panelists were saying, and also the thing that really sticks out for me, probably because like a lot of my research is relating to like culturally appropriate mentorship and everything like that, and even thinking about my own trajectory. It took me 3 cycles to get into, a PhD program in clinical and counseling psych. And I feel like the last time what actually made it was not only the strong letters of recommendation, but like applying to people who then knew me after all of those times of cycles. Because to go to a funded PhD program, which I always tell my mentees, like, unless you have someone sponsoring you, like, I don't recommend, putting that much time and dedication to a PhD program where you would either be taking out loans or you, best case scenario, you're funded and you're losing money of what you would have gotten if you were to get an industry type of job without a PhD. So I think some of the misconceptions are like, if I, have the best grades, if I study well, if I do all of these things, then that'll give me a better chance, when really it's a lot of times a networking game, right? Like, are you trying to see that you're going to like the conferences to like meet specific people? Are you being una sinvergüenza and just like really putting your shame to the side almost to just be like, I want this person to actually get to know me, so that I am more than just a piece of paper on this. And I don't think that people realize how important that is, in order to kind of, just let them know who you are. Because my GPA wasn't the strongest. It was above a 3, but like it was very average, same as like my psych major GPA. So I felt like, all right, these people got to know me in order to like, get to know like my passion for this. I can read writing about it, but there's also going to be a lot of good writers for their personal statements here. What can I do to stand out and show them that I am the best fit for this program, and that, whether or not I'm in this program, like I'm going to be good in research afterwards.
Thank you so much for the great answers. So second question would be, and this one's very important, especially during crunch time, which for many people begins today since a lot of deadlines are approaching. So how did you guys manage your time between research, application tasks, and other responsibilities during the application period?
I can start off for this one because I had a mentor tell me, um, especially like at the minimum, like a week before deadlines are due, like if you have a job, call out. Like if you, whatever you are doing around you, like applying to PhD programs, applying to graduate school, and many graduate school programs is a full-time job in and of itself. You're not going to be able to do everything at once. If you try, you're going to drop all of the balls. So like, make sure that you're taking your time and working towards that. But there's always going to be last minute things that come up. Like, how can you make sure that you have dedicated, carved time, especially when it's application season? And that's something that I took with me for like every year you're applying to something when you're in a PhD program, whether it's a fellowship, whether it's like internship for me, or whatever the case may be. And just, yeah, you're not going to be good if you try to do everything at once. You're going to be bad at some things. So which things can you prioritize now and which things can be left to the wayside temporarily?
Yeah, and to add
Awesome.
on to that, I also, for me, I'm a night owl, so that's the best time for me to actually crank out a bunch of writing. And that worked for me. Every time I would come back from work, I would just start writing my statement of intent. So find the time that you're the most productive and like carve out, like have a task list for the week. What do you aim to accomplish for your applications?
Just one last note, a bit contradictory, but like if you feel like you have a writer's block, take a break. You're not gonna write it all out that same day. It's better to like have like short chunks per day instead of like big chunks. Um, yeah, at least that helped me like taking a break, reading it out, and then coming back when I feel inspired.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Third question. So what are some red flags in graduate programs or in labs that prospective students should look out for? And it would also be nice if you guys can comment a little bit on what methods prospective students can use to seek out for these red flags as well.
Oh, I have a list. So, first of all, talk to individual grad students who are already in the lab. That's like first and foremost, and talk to them individually. Make sure there's no professors, and ideally, just like each graduate student individually, just to make sure you get their perspective. They're more likely to tell you what's wrong in the lab or the program. Um, yeah. So usually, PhDs should finish within 4 and 5 years, 6 years max. If they do anything less or more than that, that's a red flag. Um, I guess like when you're talking to graduate students, also ask how many people have left a lab or left a program or mastered out. Usually it is not reported by the department, but if it's happening really frequently, that's a pretty red flag for whoever it's like your advisor or like the program. Um, I guess I'm literally reading like the list. If you want a PhD, don't settle for admissions to a master's. I guess that's at least what I kind of, in my experience, like some programs that I was really interested in, um, didn't offer me the PhD, but instead offered me the master's. But yeah, it wasn't what I asked for, and if they were going to pay for a master's, there's other programs that would pay for either the PhD or master's. So I guess not settle for an unfunded program if you're asking for a funded position. Um, I guess the last thing I have here is if your the advisor like kind of wants you to do like side projects that wouldn't count for that dissertation, I would say that's a bit of a red flag because like all the work that you're doing in PhD like should account for your dissertation. You shouldn't be like persuaded to do like other stuff because you're a PhD, so the goal is a dissertation. You're not a postdoc, but you're able to like have that flexibility with projects. So I think there's a few things to say.
Um,
Yeah, for me, since I have a special circumstance where I cannot apply for federal funding, it is very important that the program is able to support me in ways like either having an office or resources within campus for retention. Because, yeah, it's one good thing that you get into the program, but how are they retaining their students? Mental health, like, are they providing any sort of program for that? So for me, that was a big thing, just looking through the website, what kind of stuff can they offer for me? And then also you can email them. If you can't find it, you email sometimes they have admission officers that you can email and ask them about these things. If they don't get back to you, then that's a pretty red flag. I know I tried applying to this program and they were not very clear about funding situation for just students. And they ended up saying, no, sorry, we cannot fund DACA students. So that was a straight no, but at least I didn't spend my time doing it. So I would say, yeah, they need to be responsive.
I would also say whether like maybe you are at the point where you're interviewing at the place, or if you again, right, our una sinvergüenza and like are trying to speak to the other students who are also currently in that lab, seeing whether folks are telling you, or if you can kind of like observe how many years is someone taking to actually complete their PhD, right? So like, and it's going to depend on per program and per discipline, but like if they have like a fast track of like 5 years, how many people actually do that fast track versus how many people are staying like 7, 8+ years? What happens in that situation? And if you are in a situation where, you know, you are maybe interviewing there, what's the vibe that you're also picking up too? I'm very big on energies. And I remember when I was interviewing, like there were some places where like, why am I sweating so much? Why do I feel like this person is trying to like have a gotcha moment with me while we're just interviewing them? And so kind of just being honest with yourself about like, okay, if this is vibes that I'm picking up from other students, like, you know, even if I'm not interviewing, like I'm just kind of asking and like picking folks' brains or seeing whatever other ways I can help and support them. Do they look like they're all kind of like traumatized by something? I would steer away from that lab. I would steer away from that advisor. Have people changed labs in any type of thing? I think that also is a good indicator of like this might be a toxic environment or it's maybe not good for a specific population, whether it's like a BIPOC individual or anything like that. You have to just like be very mindful of like, is this a scenario? Is this a situation where I could see myself doing well when things will inevitably get really hard for my mental health because of the school itself? And I'll have people supporting me or advocating for me, or am I just going to plummet? Kind of like what Alma was saying, like, what are the other resources there? Not only administratively, but like, you know, emotionally as well.
This very valuable insight, and I really appreciate it. And I'm pretty sure our prospective students appreciate it as well. So, fourth question, how should prospective students evaluate the funding and the support and the financial support offered by a program?
I would say start with the cost of living. That's very important. Yeah, your stipend might be pretty big, but if the cost of living, I'm in San Diego, so it is pretty high. Um, you know, if you want to be able to have more freedom with your financial finances, then you can go to a different school. But another thing is ask if there's fellowships within the school, and if you're eligible to apply for those. That usually, I know when I got in, a school was offering me like tuition for a year, and that was, that was pretty, that had a weight on what school I chose. But I would say, yeah, cost of living is very important.
I would also say check to make sure they're seeing how many years of funding, and like if health insurance is included in that. My school went through some changes recently for the better. I didn't get to benefit from it, but thankfully, like future cohorts are going to be able to. But if you fast track it, right, if you're on a bachelor's track, meaning you're not coming in with a master's in like the field that you're getting into, you can do it in 5 years, but they had only had enough funding for 3 years and they didn't include health insurance. So we were left to our own devices to make sure that we got different funding for our fourth year, because that would be like the gap. Because during our internship year, this is a full-time job, so we're getting paid as employees wherever we get matched to. Um, but just checking just to see like what those logistics are because every school is going to be different, right? If they don't offer funding but you're getting like financial aid of some sort, like what does that mean? I had gotten accepted to a different school that wasn't fully funded, but they gave me as much funding as it would be, which is the equivalent to a full year's tuition and all of those other things. But that full year of tuition was spread out between 3 years and it was like a 5 year program. So it was still that like I would have to be taking out like 200K of loans in general, even with the highest amount of that. So I would definitely say like be looking at the fine print, talking to not only the financial aid office, but like the bursar's office, like talking again to older students, like what are like the hidden fees? Like I know in my program at Teachers College, they also charge you like $7,000 if you're like the semester that you're going to propose your dissertation, even though you're taking 0 credits, but that's still like 0 credits for $7,000 that you have to kind of like find out of nowhere. So just being mindful of that and seeing how, um, yeah, what are the cost benefits of those things? Where are other areas that you can get that funding and that support from?
Just to reemphasize all these great points, as the panelists already said, so a rule of thumb for cost of living, housing should not be more than 30% of your paycheck. So make sure you check around how the housing situation is for each of the places you're considering, and make sure the paycheck you get doesn't exceed like 30% of like the housing. If I said that, but you get what I mean. 30% of your paycheck should be max for housing. So a lot of PhD programs these days, at least my school, do offer health insurance. So if you're applying and one of the options doesn't have health insurance, but another option that you are does, you can probably negotiate these things like and negotiate certain benefits like health insurance, I don't know, different benefits. And if you have like more places that offered you an offer, of course, you can negotiate that with the university that you actually go to. And lastly, I'm in an engineering program, so I don't know how different it is, but the advisor that your potential advisor must be committed to fund you throughout the whole process. Like if your acceptance to this place is conditioned to a fellowship, that's a red flag for me. Like you being accepted into a program shouldn't be conditioned to whether you get a fellowship or not. It helps a lot to have a fellowship, but your advisor must be committed to fund you throughout the whole process, or at least find more funds so you can finish it. That's my engineering student perspective, obviously, and hardcore sciences.
Yeah, thank you so much. And our panelists alluded to fellowships, and I wanted to do a little shout out of so Científico Latino does have a whole fellowship database that you guys can access online, and then there's like a whole list of different external funding opportunities that you guys can keep in your radar for when you start your graduate programs, and you can apply for these things. And also our writing center has a lot of sample applications for many of these fellowships that you guys can use as reference for your own applications and increase those probabilities of like getting that external funding. But of course, like I do agree with a lot with Hosea, like watch out for your tenure in a program being conditioned upon having a fellowship, and it does help a lot. But yeah, like it's something to, watch out for as well. So here is our last question that we have prepared for the panelists. I do want to encourage our participants to start thinking about questions for our panelists. Don't be shy. Please feel this is a safe space. Feel free to ask whatever you want, and get any anxieties, any last minute thoughts that you might have about the application process out here for us so that we can help you the best. But yeah, before we get there, let's ask our last question, which is what aspects of the admissions process were unexpected or surprisingly challenging, and how did you guys handle them?
I could start. So for me, I applied to a lot of programs since I wanted to have a wide net. So for me, that was very challenging trying to keep up with all these applications, and like some of them required a statement of intent, other ones require a personal statement, and there was just a lot of like things that needed to be done per program. And so the way I overcame this. I actually created a spreadsheet with all of the programs that I was applying. And in that same spreadsheet, I had my like little task list of what I'm currently working on and what needs to be done, and the due dates, of course, as well as the letters of recommendation. Like, who did I ask for this program? Who did I ask for this program? That's the way I kept organized and on track with my applications.
Tatiana, Hosea, would you guys want to chime in?
I think I kind of mentioned this like from the first question, but just the
Mhm.
amount of time that it takes. I remember when I was going through my first round of applications, I just was telling a mentor, like, yeah, no, I'm just going to get that all done this weekend. And she was like, have you done one? And I was like, yeah, like kind of. And then she was like, okay, let's meet again next week. But from now until next week, time yourself, see how long it takes. And like without like uploading the like statement of purposes or any of like those other things, like because each part has like their supplemental essays and everything else like that. And so just getting through, just like putting my name, putting the info, uploading transcripts, getting like it took me for like 2 hours. So think of that like if you're like, because I did something similar to Alma, right? The last time I was applying, I did like 13, 14 schools. And it helps like when you have gone through a couple of cycles, so you have those things kind of like that you could just like re-upload, but it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. Thankfully, Científico Latino, when I was applying like my last round, I was one of the mentees. They offer a lot of tuition coverages. I don't know how like you guys would specifically name that, but that helped me with at least 3 of the schools I was applying to, which was amazing. Um, yeah, so costs and time. I feel like it seems obvious now that I say it, but like it took so much more time and so much more money than I thought it was going to be.
Guess for me, the only thing I could kind of identify, like thinking back to that time, was actually the imposter syndrome of like it all, like same. I applied for 8 different programs, but yeah, convincing myself, am I really worth it? I don't know. Like it really helped, like to show my applications to friends and mentors, and they get really good feedback, but they also encourage you to continue and like, um, yeah. So a good advice was like write your essays as if your best friend was writing it for you. Um, I think that was well, remembering that it was also COVID time, so it was just like, what am I doing? But I think that was the biggest challenge to actually finish and also be like, okay, I can definitely do this.
Cool. Thank you so much. So during this time, I'm gonna stop share my screen, and then we're just gonna open the conversation for our participants to ask as many questions and questions about whatever aspect they want to ask. But before we do that, if you each can say like a few final words and a final like general piece of advice, maybe reinforcing any of the things that you previously said, that'd be really greatly appreciated, especially while our participants think about different questions that they can ask. And I can see we already have one in the Q&A, but I do encourage that we do use most of the time that we have for this panel. So ask up, people.
I think one thing I just want to emphasize again, right, is making sure that you are reaching out to people, like not only during application season. I remember like when I was finally doing it my last cycle, right, I waited until like maybe January, maybe February-ish, like, after everyone has already applied to then just first make contact and say like, hey, like I XYZ question about this recent article that they wrote or something like that in order to kind of just like answer questions. And I would do that for literally every single mentor that I wanted to have, every single faculty member that I wanted to work with or student in their lab. So that way you have a point of contact that's not just, are you accepting a student? Can I get something from you? Like it was a genuine question banking on curiosity. And then, or asking different questions about like, which would lead to questions about like, do you have an open house? Do you have these? Like, what can I do so you can see my face, so you can know me outside of here? And I think that that was all of the schools that I did get interviews for, it was because they had actually answered me back. Most won't, but the ones that do is a good sign also.
I would reemphasize go with your gut. Like definitely vibe check the advisor, vibe check the school. I feel like you'll know which one's the right choice. I feel like if I were to go back, I put in factor a lot of stuff, but I would also factor closeness to family. That's something that's not really talked about much, but I would have liked to be in a place that was a direct flight home. Right now I'm not. And that's been a bit hard, but yeah, just go with your gut. Advisor, the grad students are there, but if you get along with them, I think that sounds.
Yeah, I would agree with Hosea. Like, have your close network around your community, because grad school is not going to be easy, and sometimes you just need your community around to, uplift you. And another thing is research the programs pretty well. A lot of programs can be different. I'm in an umbrella program, meaning I go in and I do rotations in different types of science. But I know there's programs where you get right into the lab, and that could be good if you want to just jump into research, or if you're still trying to explore what you want to do, rotations could be a better path. So I would say research the program and just start early. I know I'm a procrastinator myself, but the earlier you start, the more time you have to research program and do your application without rushing it too much. But much like Tatiana, I also went through 3 cycles of application, and rejection is not fun. But I definitely learned from those. Like, okay, this is how I will strategize for next time. Yeah.
I was muted, I just realized. But thank you so much for your insights. Now we can start getting through the questions from our audience. I know Denisha already answered this question, but it would be really good to get the perspective of the panelists as well. So this attendee asked about applying to a program where they were asked how they plan to fund the first year of their PhD education, but they're aware that the program does fund first year students. So should they assume that they will get funding to the program, or are there any other steps that this person should take?
Sorry, could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, so it's more about like, okay, so if a program asks you like, oh, how do you plan to fund your first year of education? But then at the same time, you know that that the program does fund first years, like what should be the assumption, or like what steps should you take to like, get this clarity, I guess.
I feel like that might be a little bit of a red flag for me. Maybe like a tan flag. I don't know, TBD, but like if it's expected that they're going to be doing that, I would be curious why they're posing that question. That might be a question that like if you do get an interview, you can get a little bit more exploration. I think it is honest to say that like, hoping and grateful, to be getting funding from the program since XYZ has a history of funding this type of student. Um, that might also be a place to flex, like if you are applying to other fellowships, though, too, because it's probably looking to see what other sources of funding you're trying to bring to the program or what other types of prestige you're trying to bring. If you think that you're an eligible candidate for like a Ford Fellowship, IMFP, or like, National Science Foundation type of grant thing. So I would be a little bit like sus, but that might be just like a question that needs a little bit more clarification, it sounds like. But I'm always a little sus.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much for your answer. So now we have a question specifically directed for Alma. So the question is, given the recent political climate, what is your read of the funding situation for DACA students? And how do you address any worries about DACA ending and work permit running out in the middle of a program? And also, how do you address the concern for the lack of fellowships that apply to DACA slash non-traditional students?
Yeah, we actually had a situation with a different student here on my program. And luckily, I knew about the undocumented students office that my school just in general has. So they were really able to guide us through this process of not having a permit. And because in my program, you have to teach, and for that, you need a permit of work, but the student didn't have it. So they're trying to look for ways that they can support the student without them having to teach. And so I would say this is a very difficult question because I'm also in the same boat of like, what happens if my work permit is gone, right? I feel like your institution should be able to like provide you with resources that they can find alternate ways of how to fund the student or what to do in that instance. For me, that was the number one question I asked before even applying to any program is, do you fund DACA students? And if so, what is this funding? What does this funding look like? Do I need to apply for it, or do I need to, or is that something that's just available? Um, yeah, was there a second part to the question? Let's see. So concerned about like fellowships. Yeah, as far as the fellowships, Científico Latino, like Roberto mentioned, there's a database of it, and I actually have gone through it and picked up a lot of like these fellowships are available for undocumented. You don't have to even have DACA to begin with. It's similar to international students. I feel like we're in that same category where we can't really apply for federal stuff, but most international stuff will fit it within us. I guess like we can use that as well. So yeah, I hope I answered your question as best I could.
Awesome. And then there's another question that's also directed at Alma, but if any of the other panelists have an opinion on this, like it would be greatly appreciated as well. So the question is more about preprints, about the value of preprints in your CV as opposed to actual like published peer-reviewed publications. So do you guys believe preprints are a positive aspect to the application, or as it was asked in the question, or does it not mean anything for the admission team?
It absolutely means a lot because you worked on that project. Talk about the project. Yeah, you can add it as a preprint as sometimes you have like the list of things you can add it, but you can spend even further in your like actual write-up on how you contribute to that project and how you thought critically about the work. That's, I think, what matters the most is, okay, is this person really thinking critically about the science that she's doing or he or they? So I would say that's what matters the most is how you can expand on that project. What did you do in that project that is like contribution to science, for example? Um, I also posted things that were not even preprint, and I just put the list of like, oh, in preparation. But of course, I expanded more further. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add to everything that Alma was saying. I completely agree with that. I think especially as you're starting your academic career to like sometimes people don't even have that. So if you're already showing that you are familiar with the research process, that you are familiar or familiarizing yourself with what it takes to publish, that's also a really important talking point. And then a lot of times applications have like an area where you can upload supplemental materials. If the other co-authors say it's okay, when I was applying, I also uploaded like the paper that was pre-published or anything like that to kind of like highlight like my focus, like my areas that I was writing into over there to also kind of show as like a writing sample because a lot of PhD programs really are research based. Can you do research? Can you write? Can you do literature reviews even as like a bare minimum? So yeah, I think it's amazing. I think it's everything in there.
Yes. So yeah, to everything it's what was I gonna say? Yeah, even if you weren't like first author, that's still like super valuable. Like again, like most people who apply don't have that, and it's because they're not looking that you have publications. Looking at that you know their scientific process, you're interested, you're motivated. But if you already have like something in preparation, that's like pretty cool. Um, or anything, like even if it's not like, maybe if it's a science blog you do, like in my case, I had like a science blog. Like, yeah, it's so like anything that you do extracurricular within this.
Thank you. So another question is what are some things that make an applicant's personal statement stand out?
I guess being genuine, being honest about like who you are, like really tell your story. I guess like in the first paragraph has to be like something very strong and personal of yours, not just like, oh, I want to cure cancer. Like no, that's not a good thing. It has to be like something very personal and very that shows who you are. I think that first paragraph really, I guess, makes you stand out. And again, it doesn't have to be like something incredible. It can be something very simple, but it tells your story. Um, so yeah, just be yourself.
I would also say just make sure that it's not just a regurgitation of your CV. Make it also again, like it's not going to be the same as your undergrad applications because in our undergrads we could do one essay and send it to everything. every individual one can have similar themes, but like you really want to make sure that you're personalizing it and specifically even highlighting the professor that you want to be working with, why specifically this school and this program from the first paragraph, like, and then reiterating that like near the end of it. But then as you're kind of sharing your story, you want to kind of make it read as if it was inevitable for me to end up at this school. It was inevitable for me to end up at this program with this professor at this time in my life, right? Like why is it important for me to do this right now versus 5 years in the future? Why is it important for me to do this topic versus something that might be tangentially similar? And kind of understanding what that value-based system is that's kind of leading you into this and what's going to show that passion even when motivation might be out the window, because they know that that's going to happen in that process. So what's actually going to help you intrinsically stay in this program with that journey in there. So yeah, so I started the way that I started with like my undergrad essays, but then you have to make sure that you are dedicating time for each of those different schools to make sure it's not just a mad lib of like, this professor, this school, but like what makes you know a little bit more than the typical person who just goes over the school's website or the professor's website. That's why for me it was always so important to talk to students, to talk to the professor, to like actually gain these nuggets that you can include in this essay to really make you stand out, referencing when you've talked to them so that they can remember like, oh yeah, like, okay, this is when I talked to them at this open house. This is when I did this. And they're talking about that in their essay as part of their journey. That makes me remember you.
I would say answer the question too. I've read so many essays where it's like they go on and on and on. I'm like, okay, but you didn't answer the question. So get to the point and then elaborate. We're reading a ton of applications as a reviewer myself in the past, and you're exhausted and you just want to get to the point. So if you can just have a sentence of like take home message, that would help a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much for these amazing answers. The next question we have, and it's actually the last question we have so far. So, people in the audience, like we still have a few minutes left, so please feel free to keep asking questions. But the question is, how do you, as graduate students, evaluate students during interview weekends? So, what are some of the green or red flags that you guys are looking out for in prospective students who are undergoing the process of interview? And I also know there's some programs in which graduate students are also involved in the pre-interview admissions process. So if you guys can also, if that's any of y'all's experience and you also want to talk about that, that would be great as well.
I can speak to that since I have reviewed applications and then interviewed students. I like somebody who can be very genuine and I can see their passion and excitement for whatever, lab or program that they're looking for. And also like ask questions. Don't forget that you're also interviewing the program. It's not just the program interviewing you. You're also trying to find a good fit within the program. So ask questions. Yeah.
Tatiana, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just hate cliches. So like it's make sure you're genuine, you're being honest with yourself, you're being honest to the rest of the people. Um and yeah, just show your excitement, your passion. Again, like you don't have to, they're not expecting like like a full-grown scientist, publish a lot of papers. They're not looking for that. They're looking for someone who's motivated to enter this program. You don't have, like give yourself credit, but don't like uh have to be seen bigger than what you are, because like you're in your motivation, that's enough. Like and all of your experiences that you've done, and you already have like a trajectory that landed you there, and make sure, yeah, you make them know that. Yeah.
So I'd just like to add that everything is a test. I mean I hate that, but like everything is literally a test. So in the age of, COVID, post-COVID and stuff like that, some interviews are going to still be on Zoom, over Zoom. And oftentimes, before you get put in a meeting room with either a student interviewer or a PI, potential PI, sometimes you'll have a grad student who's in the room waiting with you. You should be using that opportunity to ask questions, ask their honest opinion and express interest. Something that I thought was a red flag was we had a student in the waiting room yawning and disinterested, and it was kind of like, oh, like this is your opportunity to like talk to us and get to know like the tea on the program, because like there's certain things you're not going to know until you talk to current grad students. So it was a little weird to us that they seem very disengaged. So unfortunately, I mean, we are human beings, like sometimes we're tired, I get that, but it is a test, it really is. So you gotta make sure that you're being aware of your body language and how you're coming across to people, because you don't want to seem disinterested. You want to actually show that, like, if, say, for example, you were a successful applicant and you had a great interview, the school wants to make sure that, you're actually going to want to come here if you get offered an acceptance. And one way to gauge that is based on, how the grad students perceive your level of interest. So even if this is not your top choice at whatever institution you're interviewing at, act like it, fake it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I would reiterate all of that. At the end of the day, right, the grad students aren't the ones who are going to be deciding, but sometimes like grad students can have some influence in like, oh no, I know how this person works, I know this, and they can kind of give the advisor a little bit more collateral information, which again is why I'm very big, like talk to the grad students beforehand outside of application season, be friends with them even, work on different projects, ask if they need any help with their dissertation if they're at that point. Make yourself available. The most beneficial to me mentorship relationships or peer mentorship relationships that I've had have been the ones where I've been able to help them with something and then it's been returned tenfold. So again, right, just making sure that so, like there are different ways outside of what's only on your application that people can speak to on your type of research skill, on the type of person that you are, that you're someone that a team would like to work with.
I guess one last comment, like, yeah, like I've also been involved with choosing either grad students or like professors in the department, and like usually my advisor is just like, what do you think about them? And if I didn't get the vibe, like I would tell them that would heavily impact his decision who he chooses. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Grad students are also part of the application process.
Awesome. Yeah, I think what was told to me when I was applying and interviewing was you're interviewing the entire time you're there. So like treat every interaction, every moment you have in the interview weekend as part of your evaluation, even if it's not, right? But like it's always good to play safe. Cool. So thank you so much for these answers. So now I have a question about once you're already in graduate school, what are some of the strategies that you use to handle the stress and the expectations of graduate work? And I guess like while
Yeah.
you guys think about it, something I'll say is that Científico Latino has another program called the Graduate Student Engagement and Community Program, GSEC. So it offers support for first year graduate students to basically, set their foot in graduate school, and like it's a very useful program, and it gives you that community of other graduate students who are also going through the same thing, and a lot of like of these techniques can actually come up in these conversations that you have with your mentors. But yes, take it away, panelists.
Well, first of all, a therapy. Like, make sure like you get a good therapist. Make sure like the university has some sort of thing like that, and just go to it because it is going to be hard regardless of where you go. And I guess also to find your people, find your community inside the school and also outside the school. 'Cause that's-
I actually found a hobby during my time as a graduate student. I love ceramics, and that gets me my mind off of just work in the lab and So find your hobbies or an activity that you can just detached from, you're thinking about work. That I found really, really helpful. And of course, your community, even within my graduate program, I know they encourage a community, and that has been super helpful because then I can talk to students, and if we're struggling with the same thing, it's sometimes helpful to have that I don't know what's the word, but like work relationship where like they understand what I'm going through. So yeah.
Yes, and yes to all of those things. I think during the pandemic, I picked up puzzling and paint by numbers, which was very soothing for me. Yes, I was in therapy the entire time. I actually switched from like doing sporadic therapy to like making sure it was like a weekly sessions, sometimes bi-weekly. But I think also one of the most important things for me was like making sure that you have core people who you could go to for support that are outside of whatever field that you're in. You need to have designated time where you're not talking about your research, where you're not talking about school, where you can find like little escapes, even, right? Or like maybe even if you do need to do work, but like, you just kind of want to kind of take yourself out of that environment. Like, for instance, like when I was in New York, right? I would just go to a friend's house. She would do some work for her job, and I would just do some work for schoolwork, right? And we would just like be able to kind of like parallel play with each other, but like it still was someone outside of my field that I can kind of remove myself from like the stress that everyone maybe in my cohort was experiencing. Not to say that I didn't get along with folks in my cohort, I love them as well, and that was also very important. But I think what was most important was like knowing that school isn't my whole life, like knowing that even though right now this is taking up a lot of time and is very important to me, my values don't start and end with this research that I'm doing. I have a whole, 180 personality outside of this too.
So we have another question coming probably from someone who's coming into the United States to apply to programs from abroad, or I don't know, maybe this can apply for people from the United States who want to study abroad. Do you guys have any specific advice for international students on how they can enhance their applications, especially in schools where, like, unfortunately there is a difference in the amount of people that they take internationally versus domestically.
I guess if you're applying from the US to Europe or any other country, is sometimes they require a master's. So look at the requirements for that. And then if you're doing the other way, coming from a different country to the US, sometimes programs like Roberto mentioned, they capped the number of international students they admit every year. Maybe look at the statistics. Sometimes they have that in their websites, how many international students are admitted every year. And that can give you a good idea of, if you want to apply to that program.
Cool. Thank you so much. And we have one more question here, which is, did you ever feel pressure to hang out often slash be very close with your lab mates when you weren't totally comfortable with them yet? So it's a question more about graduate school life as well.
I feel like know thyself, right? Like if you're an extrovert and you need those other people, then like do that. But if you're an introvert and the vibes aren't there just yet, you might also not show up as your best self. So I feel like trust those vibes, whatever they might be telling you. Sometimes you can also meet people and be like, we're going to have some fun together, but you're not going to be my closest friend. And that's also okay. Again, right? That's why for me, it's always important to have people outside of the school because you can be close, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. It depends sometimes on cohort size, on vibes in there. But, trying to see like where you can get common ground in just to kind of like possibly like reduce any competitiveness. Hopefully there wouldn't be any, but sometimes schools have that. But yeah, go off of your own vibes. I would say if you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable. Don't force it.
Like, well, at least with my lab, like I'm pretty close to for some of the people, but not really close with others. I guess you can just treat this as your coworkers, like they don't have to be your friend. This is like a place you work in, and you can just plug in, plug out, see, maybe have a beer one day, but then, like they're not, you set the limits. They don't have to be your best friends, but conveniently, no, my best friend is here, but yeah, that doesn't have to be the case. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. Alma, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, don't like I will say the same thing that the panelist said. Don't force it because then it's not genuine. Um, I personally do have a really good relationship with my lab mates and we do things outside the lab, but that I know when I was rotating, that was not the case for every lab. And that for me was like, okay, that's not an environment I see myself. I want to be able to be friends with them genuinely. But yeah, don't do it if you don't feel like doing it.
Awesome. So thank you so much once again for all of your amazing answers. I think we are almost at the time. But yeah, if any more questions arise, feel free to find us and contact us. And best of luck to everyone during crunch time for applications. And again, check out our resources online, our writing center, our fellowship database. Anything we can do, like we're always open to new feedback as well. So thanks to all of you for attending, and thanks to our panelists as well.